out. Everybody.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lights Out. I'm your host, Josh.
And I'm your host, Austin.
And I'm the producer, Daniel.
And we're the Lights Out Boys.
Oh, yeah.
And we're back with another one for you today. And this case is, oh my.
Phew.
It's, the headlines on it are hard to believe. But we're going to be covering the story of Virginia McCullough. And she did something very, very, honestly, evil. And it's really hard to even wrap your mind around, like, why she did this in the first place, or what was the point of it.
Yeah.
Especially in the end, she just gives it all up, you know?
Yeah, and she knows that she's doing something evil, too. That's the scarier part. Because
it seems like, yeah.
We have some footage we'll show you about the with the body cam footage when they go and bust in there. But yeah, her reaction is really disturbing and bizarre.
She's the daughter who lived with her murdered parents for 4 years. And the details are as disturbing as that title is.
Yeah.
It's truly, truly psychopathic stuff here. And this is coming out of the UK as well. And I think there's a few other stories similar to this in the UK, which is kind of bizarre to me. But it's just...
what's going on over there, guys?
What's happening here?
Yeah. I don't really know if there's... no, there's some crazy cases like this in the US. What was the one with the cult woman who was like her skin turned blue, but then she was like covered in gold for a while. She was like a cult leader.
Oh, yeah.
I think you guys might have covered her.
Yeah, God, it's been a minute. Yeah.
We do weird stuff
There's definitely
that.
some weird... I mean, there's weird people everywhere.
Yeah.
That are just doing just the most disturbing, evil shit, it seems like.
Yeah.
But before we get into that story, we wanted to talk about a little update to our schedule. We are going to be changing our posting day for the podcast. So for the longest time, since the very beginning of the show, it's always been Fridays. And honestly, I don't really know why I picked Fridays. I just felt like Fridays was like Friday the 13th, you know, it's spooky and whatever, you know, and I thought that was a good reason to post on Fridays. But the reality is, you know, once you do this for a while and you podcast for a while, you start, you know, being able to see sort of the trends in analytics, and they show that a lot of people, especially our YouTube viewers, aren't around on Friday afternoons when the episodes go up. And also just, you know, it's the end of the week for all of you audio listeners. And I don't want you guys to forget about the podcast on Friday if you don't finish it. You know, maybe you listen to it on the way to work and then you forget about it over the weekend. And so, you know, we've been thinking about this change for a long time, but we're finally going to make the move.
Yes. It's been a long time coming. I was joking. I think we have been talking about this for literally 2 years.
No,
we've never done it.
We just have never found the right time to do it. And we actually are going to be off next week. We're just going to take a week off. Just, you know, need a little time to ourselves to recharge. You know, we're trying to catch up on some work here behind the scenes.
And it'll be 4th of July. So you guys really won't miss us, I don't think. Well, you will, but not the same way, because I think everyone will be busy next Friday.
At least here in the U.S.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
People in the U.K. could give a damn about next Friday, but and really elsewhere in the world. But
true.
But yeah, so we're going to be moving our posting or upload date for the podcast to Mondays, which I think is better. You know, if I were, you know, for the podcasts that I listen to, I always like the ones that are there at the beginning of the week, because then I have all week to listen to it.
Yes.
It's just more
convenient. I can slot it into my routine more when it's throughout the week, because weekends is kind of a crapshoot. I'm doing stuff, and it's not always the same day to day. But yeah, Mondays, it's squared away every single day.
We're the first voices you hear on a Monday morning commute, on, you know, morning in the office, at your computer.
Yeah, you might be
wherever
you
might
feel a little grumpy waking up to go to work, but then you hear our beautiful voices and it changes your whole week.
So we will be posting starting July 7th will be the first episode that goes up on Monday, correct?
Yes.
And, you know, saying it'll be out in the morning, which is nice. This will also allow us to get the video out earlier in the day versus later in the afternoon. So everything will be coming out in the morning. You'll have it waiting for you. This beautiful package that is lights out will be waiting for you on your doorstep, ready to go for your Monday morning commute. But yeah, there won't be an episode on July 4th. The first episode on a Monday will be July 7th, and then it'll be on every Monday thereafter. So, I know some of you may miss us on Fridays, and I'm sorry, but I feel like this is better for everybody involved in the long run. So we will be posting Mondays. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. And we have a decent amount of UK listeners, right? And they should care about July 4th because that's when we whooped you guys and we left.
Yeah. There you go. Well, and not only that, but it's, that way you guys will be able to get the video a lot earlier as well.
Yeah, true.
It won't be like as you're going to bed
or
already asleep. When the video's coming out, you'll have much more time with it.
Yeah. So our friends across the pond, it'll sync up quite nicely for everybody, I think.
Yeah. So that's the big update there. Otherwise, nothing else is changing about the show or anything like that. So no worries there. But yeah, let's go ahead and just get into what the hell happened with the McCullough family, because just how did we end up at this such a crazy end here? So we have to go back to the beginning with Virginia McCullough, who went by Ginny. She was born October 20th, 1987 in Chelmsford, Essex, England. She was the youngest of 5 and born to John and Lois McCullough. The court has granted her sisters anonymity, so not much is known about them. Yeah, 4 other sisters.
Yep.
So, pretty decent-sized family here. And since the sisters have remained relatively private regarding this case, friends, extended family, coworkers, and neighbors have detailed much of the family dynamics, because I think that's really important to this case. The family lived in the village of Great Baddow, Chelmsford, and this is one of the largest villages in the UK and is famously home to the most prolific British executioner, William Calcraft. It's about 40 miles northeast of London, and they lived in the Pump Hill neighborhood in a plain-looking 3-story house on the southeast side of town. Their father, John McCullough, had worked as a management consultant for most of his life, and he also worked briefly as an author and performance coach. And by the 2020s, he was a retired business studies lecturer who worked at Anglia Ruskin University. He spent nearly 4 years a day commuting 50 miles each way.
That's a lot.
That's a serious commute. Yeah, that's almost like an hour probably driving, or a couple hours, I guess, over there. So 4 hours total. The sisters described their father as caring and hardworking. He had hobbies like playing golf and snooker. He had a passion for education and writing, and he was dedicated to his career in university education. He was also known for his humor and often made his family laugh with his countless jokes. Former neighbors described Virginia's upbringing as not idyllic, and some have painted their father in a different light as a fairly strict father. Neil Mulcahy, an acquaintance and coworker of one of the sisters at a local supermarket when they were teenagers, recalled many different stories from the household. These stories suggest the sisters might have been scared of their father at some point during their childhood. Neil said, quote, "I remember once her dad, as a punishment, made her cut the grass of the entire back lawn with a pair of scissors for staying out late, she told me. She didn't want to be at home. And she and most of the other sisters left as soon as they could and didn't go back after that." That says a lot about fairly strict. I'd say that's pretty damn strict.
Yeah.
And I don't know, kind of borderline abusive in a way, because to make somebody go out and cut the whole lawn with scissors and just for coming home late, like, I don't know.
It seems like there's some dispute over whether they lived in an abusive household or not. But according to the other sisters who have remained anonymous, they deny that Virginia was by any means abused.
Yeah.
So that's important to clarify.
Could just be questionable punishment.
Old school, strict.
Right. Wash your mouth out with soap type parents, As for the mother, Lois was described by Virginia's sisters as kind, thoughtful, and caring, and she loved being a grandmother. She also had many friends around the world through a pen pal hobby, and some of them she had written to for several decades. She also had a passion for history and an interest in the royal family. Both John and Lois were described as eccentric, reserved, and very old-fashioned people who sometimes dressed in the fashion of the 1950s. They loved trips to the seaside together, specifically to Walton-on-the-Naze on the eastern coast, and here they enjoyed walking and visiting different attractions. And they hope to move there one day once they retired. They also love spending time with their daughters, and according to Virginia's sisters, their family was their pride and joy. So it seems like despite maybe some of the rumors and, some of the potentially questionable punishment tactics or old-fashioned parenting, they were, for the most part, a good, close family, like spending time together. But some reports detail a darker side to the family. One of Virginia's anonymous sisters said their parents were functional rather than affectionate. As the sister grew up, Lois had spent much of their time looking after the family and raising them while John was at work. Virginia once described her as a happiness hoover. She also called her a complete control freak. On one occasion in the early 90s, one of the daughters had a long-term issue with bedwetting. This was speculated to be Virginia because she had gotten the nicknames Pissy Ginny and Smelly Ginny at school. Lois reportedly punished her daughter for bedwetting, although it is not clear how. But it got to the point where social services and the school became involved. Allegedly, she had sent her daughter to school in urine-soaked clothing as punishment, and others alleged that neighbors had called social services after hearing screams and smacking sounds inside the home. Social services became involved for a short period of time, but no further action was taken. Steve Thurley, a local butcher who had lived in the area his whole life, said, quote, "I have customers that went to school with her and they said she was picked on. I've heard she took a lot of bullying and Mickey taking. Her nickname was Smelly Ginny." Virginia struggled to make friends in school, and she also struggled with her studies. She was bullied because of the way she dressed and the way she smelled. She often tried to buy her friends by bringing people gifts, but she was incredibly awkward. She'd even tried to develop new personalities with different backstories, but many could see through her lies. I don't know about you, but something that I find to be kind of hard week to week is taking care of my mental health. Right?
Yeah.
Taking care of your physical health is one thing, is always a struggle, but oftentimes you forget to take care of your mental health, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just as important. And sometimes you don't know where to start. If you need to talk to somebody, a licensed therapist, it can be really, really difficult and daunting to find somebody who actually, fits your needs and you just get along with, right? You got to be able to get along with your therapist. You want to like them. You want to talk to them. You don't want to be dreading that conversation with them. And so it can be difficult to find somebody, but that has all changed thanks to Rula. Well, Rula isn't just affordable. They'll stick with you throughout your journey, making sure you get the best therapy and that you're making progress. With Rula, every provider is carefully vetted and chosen for their expertise. You'll always know you're in the hands of quality providers who are dedicated to making real progress in your care. And if you go check out their website, they have 15,000 plus licensed providers with diverse backgrounds and specialties, 170 plus clinical specialties offered. So there's something for all needs. I mean, individual therapy, couples therapy, family therapy, you've got child therapy, teen therapy, and psychiatry. So they basically cover the full gambit of, all the mental health professionals you could possibly ever want.
Yeah. And it's fairly affordable, which is great. It's covered by most healthcare, health insurances, and pay as little as $15 per session.
Yeah, that's not a bad deal,
Yeah.
honestly. We've heard nothing but good things about it, and we're in the process and maybe checking it out ourselves. So when you go to rula.com/lightsout, you'll put in all your information, the type of care that you're looking for, your insurance info. Then you tell them what is most important to you. What are you struggling with? Maybe it's anxiety, it's depression, maybe it's family issues. Then from there, they match you up with different providers that you can take a look at, and then you can schedule your visit with them based on what works for you. And it looks like they have times at all times of day, weekends, nights, whatever it may be, and then you connect with your provider over live video from wherever you feel comfortable. So the convenience is there as well. There's no driving anywhere. There's no dealing with traffic. It's all on your own schedule, and it's all from the comfort of your home or wherever you want to do therapy, which is awesome. So we're big fans of Rula, and I think you will find Rula to be a really beneficial platform if you want to check it out. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support them on their journey toward improved mental health and overall well-being. Just head over to rula.com/lightsout to get started today. After you sign up, they'll ask you where you heard about them. So what do? Please support the show and tell them that we sent you.
Go to rula.com/lightsout and take the first step towards better mental health today. You deserve quality care from someone who cares? By the couple's retirement years in the late 2010s and early 2020s, John and Lois were both in poor health and had a slew of medical issues. John, he had hypertension, type 2 diabetes, hypercholesterolemia, and glaucoma. In a court testimony, he was also described as, quote, very much a man of routine who was a heavy drinker and also on the autistic spectrum. Lois had agoraphobia and traits of obsessive compulsive disorder. If you don't know, the Mayo Clinic describes agoraphobia as an anxiety disorder that involves fearing and avoiding places or situations that might cause panic and feelings of being trapped, helpless, or embarrassed. Many people who suffer from agoraphobia often stay at home, indoors, in what they would consider a safe, controlled environment, and she was also prone to anxiety attacks. She also reportedly had germophobia and would often scrub down the house with disinfectant. This is important going forward because a lot of you question, how can someone live with, dead bodies for 4 years? This kind of plays into it because some people had caught on to the fact that John and Lois didn't often want to go outside. Not only did they have physical health issues, but there were also maybe some mental issues that didn't allow them to often leave the home potentially. So like I said, because of these physical and mental conditions, the couple had become very reclusive as time went on, and they often didn't leave the house unless they had an emergency doctor's appointment or even a scheduled doctor's appointment or took a vacation out to the coast, which they loved to do. A former neighbor said this about the family. They were all very reclusive people, particularly the parents. They never socialized or mixed with the community. No one had anything to do with them. The children wouldn't be dressed well, and I heard that they were teased about this at school, but others said that they didn't appear anything out of the ordinary for such a large working-class family. Inside the house, John and Lois slept in separate beds, possibly because of their health concerns, but also, if you remember, because John had those very long commute times to the university. So sometimes he would be getting home very, very late. He wouldn't want to disturb his wife's sleep, so they slept in separate beds. He slept on the first floor. She had a bed on the second floor. And because of their failing health in their retired years, they had to rely on their youngest daughter, Virginia, as their caregiver. By 2019, Virginia was 31 years old and still living at her parents' home. John was 70 at the time and Lois was 71. They let Virginia live with them rent-free. She didn't have a job, but told her parents she was a salaried web designer and had to go into the office every day. That is a bit contested. She might have had a web designer job at some point. I think she maybe also briefly worked at a bar for a little bit years before this. She also told her parents that she was studying to become an artist and always said her art would make them a lot of money one day. Over time, she had convinced her parents that she had several physical and mental health conditions, and she also didn't have any meaningful relationships, friendly or romantic, outside of her family home. Meanwhile, as she's taking care of them, she took advantage of John and Lois's money. Not only did her father often give her money outright, but she also ran up a large credit card debt and took out loans under her parents' names. They had given her control of all their finances, including their bank accounts, life savings, pensions, and winter fuel payments. And when they eventually noticed these odd transactions, Virginia would just claim that they had somehow lost the money to scams or identity fraud. She said that she had made some mistakes regarding cybersecurity, so their accounts had been compromised, and they pretty much just took her at her word.
Which I think is really hard for people to sort of wrap their mind around.
Yeah, to come to the conclusion that your daughter is stealing from you.
Yeah, here's the, baby of the family, their sweet Ginny.
Yeah.
And
the caretaker, too.
Yeah, and from what they know, she would have no reason to steal from them, right? 'Cause she's a salaried web designer. She's making money. She's going in the office all the time, supposedly. But really, she's just taking advantage of the situation. Her parents are ill. Their health's falling apart. Mental health's also probably falling apart to some extent. And they're also just old-fashioned. I mean, that's the big thing about them is they're very simple. They live in simple, quarters, very just ordinary people who don't go out much. So you
Yeah.
can imagine their experience with technology and what's going on in the world is very, very limited. So it'd be
Sure.
actually pretty easy to
Convince like, oh yeah, your
Convince
accounts
them,
were
like-
compromised because whatever. And we know that Virginia is a very calculated liar and manipulator. So
she was probably pretty convincing.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, they were compromised. We got hacked.
Yeah.
There's hackers everywhere,
Right.
Mom and Dad. By June 2019, Virginia had racked up 60,000 pounds of debt. We're talking about 81,000 US dollars. I mean, that is a sizable chunk. And they hadn't expected their daughter to be taking advantage of them. She had no criminal record, and to their knowledge, she had never done anything like this before. So it's just kind of the last thing on their minds is that our daughter's literally stealing from right under our noses. Around mid-June 2019, neighbors noticed that they hadn't seen John or Lois out of the house at all. Some figured that they had traveled to the sea and stayed there for a while. And on June 18, 2019, one of Virginia's sisters got a text from her mother, and it said, "Your dad and I are at the seaside in Walton this week," and signed Mum X. Later that night, another text read, "Good night, Mum X." Days and weeks and months passed, and no one had seen John and Lois. Whenever anyone requested to see them, Virginia always made excuses, like that they were out of town or they just weren't feeling well. One of the daughters was able to get a hold of their mother on the phone, and Lois's voice sounded hoarse and muffled, like she was very ill. John and Lois also allegedly called the local police station to report trivial things, and Virginia constantly canceled any appointments with their doctors. And as the months passed, in 2020, what had hit the world, like a ton of bricks, like a freight train, COVID-19 restrictions. And this caused everybody to isolate themselves in their homes, which this gave the McCulloughs even more reason to not see anybody for a very long time. And Virginia was like, oh, this is very convenient.
Right.
Now there's a legitimate reason that nobody will contest because we're all at home.
Yep.
But Virginia began acting stranger than usual. A coworker, Joe, who worked with Virginia a few times at a pub, said that she was strange. And she used to bring in presents for staff, including makeup, perfume, and wigs. One worker said the manager would drop her at home and she'd go into her bag for the keys and take forever to find them, like she didn't want to go in. Almost like just delaying for some reason.
Yeah.
Virginia would also go around town just buying food from the local restaurants, and then she'd go and leave it on neighbors' doorsteps. Phil Sargent, who lived 2 doors down from the McCulloughs, said she gave him steaks, donuts, Chinese takeout, and even tools, including saws.
So if you remember from like her school days, this is how she tried to make friends. She
Gifts.
thought, I could just, buy people, buy friends. Yeah. So is this what she's doing here? And then for what reason? Why all of a sudden is she just dropping all these gifts off at people's houses?
One, you're like, where's all this money come from?
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
She's, this is what she's using some of that money for.
Yeah.
Buying these gifts for people. And is this out of like a genuine want for friendship, or is this out of a way to sort of create a cover for herself?
That might be it.
Which is it?
Yeah.
Virginia later hired Judith Way as a gardener in 2022, and she paid her 20 pounds an hour and gave her expensive jewelry and perfume. She also cooked her muffins and soup. And Judith eventually made a list of all the items given to her by Virginia, which was a list 4 pages long. So she's just like doling it out, man.
Yeah.
You were, you're probably pretty happy if you were
the gardener. Yeah.
The gardener, or just her neighbor.
Yeah.
You came into contact with her.
Also, if you look at pictures of the property, there couldn't have been that big of a garden even on that property. It's really, they had like a tiny little side yard and like a bit of a backyard, but there's really not.
You need a
much
gardener
there.
for that?
Yeah. It's very odd.
Judith said, I vaguely knew her parents. She told me they would visit under the cover of darkness from the seaside town because they didn't want to be seen by the neighbors who were being horrible to them. Virginia would then give Judith seashells she claimed to have picked up while visiting her parents. But Judith was never allowed inside the house. But anytime Virginia opened the door to the home, Judith could smell that it reeked of heavy perfume. Virginia would continue giving gifts to neighbors around town. She'd leave bottles of liquor or 2 potted cherry trees on another neighbor's doorstep. Any given day, she'd be out in the front of the house just sweeping the concrete with a broom over and over again. Almost like, I'm just taking my sweet time.
Yeah.
I will stay out here as long as I possibly can.
Possibly I need some fresh air. because it might stink inside.
One time, Alan Thompson, who rented out a television to the McCulloughs, also became suspicious of something going on in the house. Virginia called him and abruptly canceled the TV rental on her parents' behalf. When Alan's staff arrived at the home to pick up the TV, Virginia told them they could not enter the property. The TV was already prepared for them to pick up on the front door. So she's like,
do
not even
come
gonna
in.
have you come in. Here you go. I helped you out here. Around the corner from the Pump Hill neighborhood was a courtyard of shops called the Vineyards. Virginia would sometimes shop here 3 or 4 times a day, and she'd buy expensive trees and plants at the Vines Fruiterer's Greengrocer. And I didn't just stutter there. It's literally called Fruiterer's.
Fruiterers.
The owner, Paul Hastings, said she would come in daily and waffle a load of rubbish.
That's so British.
Waffle a load of rubbish.
I'm going to start using
Love
that. That's good.
She'd create scenarios around people in Pump Hill, and you just dismissed it and thought she probably needs a little bit of help. So it's like, it's very obvious that people are like, something's
wrong.
You know, something's off with Virginia. Why is she doing this? The things she's doing and saying, and just all isn't really adding up.
Yeah. And it sounds like people were also willing to just, oh, she's a bit odd.
Yeah.
But okay, she's just giving people
that whole family is a little odd. They don't ever leave the house.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, she's just giving gifts. That's harmless, It does get a little bit weirder though. Friends, neighbors, and family still hadn't seen John and Lois for years. They would receive texts here and there. Virginia told everyone that John and Lois had left the home and spent most of their time out on the coast. And they were just enjoying their time out there so much that they did not want to return.
The people that don't like to leave their house. Just want to stay on vacation forever.
Right. Friends and family would occasionally get postcards from them, postmarked from the seaside. So, okay, the story adds up. Virginia also told concerned neighbors, friends, and family that John and Lois were just tired of people gossiping about them, and that's why they didn't want to come back to Pump Hill. Later, Virginia would explicitly tell relatives to stay away from the family home. Neighbor who lived next door, Phil Sargent, we mentioned him earlier, he said, the curtains were always drawn and you couldn't see if anybody was in the house. They were just like shadows. They'd move very quickly from A to B. As for his personal opinions on Virginia, he said, she'd come across as quite pleasant. She was funny. She was irreverent as well. She had a dark sense of humor. Neil McCullough, the old acquaintance and coworker of one of the sisters at a local supermarket we mentioned earlier, later became the family's postman. He said, after a couple times delivering there, I said, I worked with your sister, and I was asking where the mom and dad were because I hadn't seen them. Virginia said her parents were in their holiday home in Norfolk. As soon as she found out that I knew her sister, she got a P.O. box to pick up the mail because she didn't want me going near. Virginia made the excuse that people had been stealing her mail, and that's why she got a P.O. box. But clearly it's because she didn't want people coming up to the home at all. Each time then she went to her P.O. box, she would, as she always did, drop off a bunch of donuts to the workers, and then she would strategically use moonpig.com to schedule sending out birthday, Christmas, and anniversary cards to friends and family. Each card also was always signed by John and Lois. And for the grandchildren, the cards were often accompanied with some gifts. So she had a whole plan and like a whole schedule to keep up this ruse. The neighbor across the street, Russell Thorington, found Virginia's behavior odd and uncomfortable because with him it was a bit different than the others. He had moved abroad for 5 years, but he returned in 2019, and for the next several years, Virginia would constantly bother him. He said, she would leave strange notes, a tiny LED Christmas tree once. I had a steak in a packet put through my letterbox. She stalked me to the point that she knew when I had come in from work, sometimes at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., and within 15 minutes, there would be a knock on my door. Hi, Russ, how are you? I'd get a note from her like once a week. Nothing was ever malicious apart from the fact it was really annoying. It was just overly friendly and quite odd. In one of her notes, she offered to do a free portrait of his pet dog, Pip, writing, "She's a nice-looking dog." She claimed she had drawn another neighbor's dog in a note which said, "They have been lovely to me while 2 of my family have been seriously ill when things have got too emotional for me. They have met all my siblings and parents and know us for a while growing up too." Sounds like she's trying to kind of leave a trail of, my family, we're still interacting and everything. Her behavior was so odd that Russell began keeping a file of evidence in case he ever needed to report Virginia to the police. By 2023, neighbors began hearing Virginia screaming inside her home at any given time, day or night. Then they began seeing her wandering the neighborhood wearing a maternity dress and a fake pregnancy bump at times.
Yeah, which was clearly fake.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, what the?
She doesn't date. So yeah, what? She would tell people she was pregnant, even though most knew that she wasn't. She would even carry fake hospital paperwork and images of ultrasounds.
She just print off Google.
Yeah, probably. Her own sisters, who had long since left their mom and dad's house by this time, described Virginia as socially awkward and a compulsive liar.
Well, I'm sure people were like, pregnant with whose baby?
Yeah.
We have never seen anybody with you at your house or anywhere.
And I can imagine it's just like that bump came out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden she's 3 months pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, what?
You don't just go around and be like, I'm pregnant, instantly have like 3rd trimester bump. Like, come on.
And bringing hospital paperwork around. What?
Nobody does that.
Yeah,
Not
nobody.
A single soul does that.
I could understand the pictures, but
see,
yeah, come on.
I'm pregnant.
Yeah. It's so weird.
She's like carrying a little like pee test around.
Right. Yeah. I swear.
First response, pregnant.
Yeah.
She like bought it on eBay or something.
Right.
Somebody's like actual test.
Or she's just going through people's garbage cans, taking the test out.
At night.
Right. Yeah.
Like a raccoon.
Yeah.
Climbing into, oh.
Yeah. Is that a raccoon? No, it's just Virginia again going through the garbage.
Was that pregnancy bump on Amazon Prime Day? She saw.
Yeah, right. How much do one of those suckers cost?
You can buy one. I mean, Jeff Bezos has got it all, man. You want a fake pregnancy bump? We got you.
How much is one, Daniel?
Anywhere between like $30 and $300.
Oh, wow. All right. That's quite a big jump in price there.
Depending on how you want to adhere it to your belly.
Yeah, and like the size and how long it's going on. I found one right here. About $30.
Wow.
Nice. We'll leave a skin rash after you're done wearing it.
It can be here by July 4th.
Damn. Could you order one for me? I'll pay you back. I need to be pregnant by July 4th.
And the frequently bought together, it's that and fake cigarettes.
Oh my God.
No.
That's got to be for a costume, right? Yeah, it has to be.
Oh, man.
That's funny. Wow.
Ah.
Don't smoke if you're pregnant, people.
Yeah.
Come on. But it gets weirder because as Virginia's home and doing all this bizarre behavior, she's calling the police constantly. It's estimated there were about 150 phone calls from the McCullough residence over only a few years directly to the police.
150?
That's a lot. During one phone call in August 2023, Virginia claimed that 3 intruders had broken into her backyard and attacked her. She had heard a noise out there at night and went to check on the yard. That's when the alleged intruders then attacked her. When police arrived, they noted her injuries were strangely, quote, geometric, and she had straight marks on her face. They appeared to have been self-inflicted with a knife. The incident didn't make sense to neighbors either. One neighbor told police, "It supposedly happened in the early hours, but you would not have confronted people in those circumstances." Meaning, if you heard shit going on out there in the middle of the night, are you really going to like leave your house to go check on the side yard?
Yeah.
Maybe. This is the UK. I don't think that.
Well, why
would really
not
fly
just call the police like all the other time?
Yeah, exactly. You've
clearly
already called
have
them 150
police
times.
on speed dial. Like,
Yeah.
What do you know? This time you're like, I'm going to take care of this myself.
By myself. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't add up.
It almost, yeah. I don't know. I'll talk about this later, but I'm like
Okay.
already starting to like piece it together. Like, is she trying to I think a lot of these moves are very calculated and are very much an attempt to try to cover up what the police are about to find.
Exactly.
And so she's trying to figure out ways of like, how do I cover up what's been done?
Yeah.
So that maybe I don't look so guilty.
Yeah. I think it's also a way of getting them so close to the house where just like everything's still fine here. We had this odd encounter outside of the house, but you've been here. So you know, there's nothing really going on here.
Right.
And you have it documented as well. I think it's all a part of it, right? This case was eventually closed with no explanation. I think the police just didn't really believe her, and they thought Virginia was testing the waters with police response, possibly. How fast can you get here?
Yeah, it's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
But by the end of summer 2023, it had been 4 years and 3 months since anyone had last seen Lois and John. That's a long time.
Long.
Their general practitioner, who often treated John and Lois, finally became overly concerned, which you'd think their doctor would be like, well, they haven't been in a year, 2 years. Okay, maybe what's going on here?
Right, yeah.
4 years.
4 years. I could get through, it's like COVID happens and everything.
Yes.
But really, I mean, that's 4 years though. I mean, that's
There's
crazy.
telehealth. There's you could get on the phone with them.
Yeah, true. And I think the other red flag was, which is weird that Virginia didn't think to do this, but why didn't she be like, oh, well, we're moving to another general practitioner?
Yeah.
Like we found another one. Sorry, we're not coming back. But she didn't really cover her tracks there.
No.
Which is odd.
And really, it was a huge convenience for Virginia that the COVID lockdowns had enforced this isolation for a long period of time. So for a long time, we all remember, I think a lot of people wouldn't have questioned that much time lapsing without necessarily seeing someone physically. But again, there's lots of other ways to see people virtually and, talk to them in other ways, or even just meet up and outside. Social distancing.
Right. Social distancing was huge. And I remember, video calls. Video calls was a huge thing during that time, right?
But none of that.
Nope.
And by 2023, the restrictions had long been over with, and the general practitioner figured that surely by now, John and Lois would have attempted to reach out for an appointment, especially if they hadn't been in that long.
Yeah.
You think it'd be overdue, or at least let them know, oh, we started going to somebody else.
Right.
Said,
and knowing that they have so many health problems too.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Come on, at this point.
Well, Virginia had canceled every single appointment for years and always denied rescheduling. So the doctor reached out to the Essex County Council safeguarding team through their website. After the doctor mentioned their concerns, the Essex County Council contacted the Essex Police to do a welfare check on John and Lois. Essex Police initially treated it as a missing persons investigation, and on September 13th, 2023, the Essex Police called the McCullough residence asking for John and Lois, and Virginia answered and gave them a detailed excuse about how her parents were traveling and why they hadn't been seen, but she said they would be back the following month if the police wanted to swoop back in and check on them then. But the Essex Police wasn't buying her story, so they escalated the investigation to a murder investigation and then planned to arrest Virginia under the suspicion of murder. Around the same time, Virginia went into the local fruiterers and told the cashier, "The police are after me. They think I've murdered my mom and dad, but I haven't."
What a bizarre thing to say to a strange cashier.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. On September 15th, 2023, at 12:12 p.m., police arrived at the Pump Hill house to arrest Virginia on suspicion of murder. When they first knocked on the door, no one answered. Officers split up and some approached the rear door as well. And then one of the officers came ready to party and got his battering ram out to bust kind of the lower panel in the door out. Let's take a look and see what happens next.
No one in here at the moment. Hold on. The police. Got it. Stay where you are. Stay where you are. Stay where you are. Show your hands. You there?
Jenny?
Yep.
Jenny? Oh. The time is 12:12. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder against
Jonathan McCullough and Lois McCullough.
Yeah,
okay?
okay.
You don't have to say anything, but in my humble defence, you did not
Can I just
mention
take my cup
when in
out?
question, so much like want anything to do with the evidence. Okay? Alright, your rest is
I'll
necessary
cooperate, I'll
for a
cooperate.
prompt and effective.
Is there anything in the pot that we should know about?
Yes, there
Where?
is. Can I take you to it?
No, you can tell me.
Can you go in there for a second, just so I can tell you something about what's in there?
Yeah.
Thank you. And then,
I want to tell us
the only
something.
reason I said I need to tell you something about what's upstairs on the top floor as well.
It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
It's a bit more quieter. Is it here?
Yeah.
Yes, mind your face, obviously.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not that dangerous.
No, it's fine.
I know, but obviously I've got to be careful. My dad's body's in there.
Right, okay.
Yep, okay. Obviously I'll
What about
say,
your mum?
a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
That's why I said, can I go upstairs and show
Right,
you?
can you
If
explain
wanna
it to
bring
us, please? Because
officers,
we're trying to preserve this. It's now going to be seen, so we need to preserve this the best we can. So I don't want you to have you walking up there,
my cup,
all right?
please.
Because that's for your well-being as well as ours.
Oh, no, up.
Okay. So what?
Thank you.
Where
Can I grab
will
some
we
hair
find your
bands
mum?
as well, if possible?
Where will we find your mum?
Okay, so upstairs there are about 5 wardrobes.
Yep.
It's behind the bed, but back next to the sink. It's the second one.
And then here, the video cuts a little bit, probably for privacy reasons. And so here she is talking about, she basically just immediately starts confessing about how she killed her father. So here's this video.
Very chill too.
Yeah.
I slipped 5 of those into his drink. There were about 2 or 3 drinks that I brought downstairs. And yeah, they were basically, he didn't drink all of them. He only drank probably about half of 2. But yeah, when I went in the morning, this was before my mother. When I went in the morning, early hours, I got up about half an hour early, about 6 o'clock in the morning. Came in and he was gone.
We will circle back around to this later. It's quite a crazy confession that she gives.
Yeah, and just like on the scene too.
Right
you
there,
know,
yeah.
To launch immediately into like a full-blown confession.
Yeah.
You don't see that a whole lot.
The officer basically stops her and he's like, we'll take your statement at the station. Like,
You're going to be spending a lot of time with us. Okay?
Yeah,
we don't need to do this all right here.
Yeah.
And you wonder if this is another calculated move, or is this just her feeling like I need to get all this guilt off of my shoulders here, and I'm just going to, she's just had it all pent up, and it's
right.
like, it's just all coming
probably
out.
that.
That's what I think it is too.
Yeah.
Just 4.5 years of
She's just like,
Yeah.
and then kind of is feeling this release of just finally telling, everybody this dark secret she's had for so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's continue on here.
I did know that this would kind of come eventually. It's proper that I serve my punishment. So, yeah.
Complete admission of guilt. Wants to be punished.
Yeah.
Knows she should be punished.
Do you think this is still her being manipulative to some degree? Like, do you actually think that she believes, okay, yeah, I'll whatever my punishment is, I'll pay it? Because I'm like, this is 4 years, man. I don't think you're interested in like serving your punishment. You were covering this up, but now that you're caught, all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, no, I'll serve my punishment.
I don't know. It's hard because I feel like if she had really thought this through, she would have been not saying a damn thing right now.
Right. Yeah. True.
And waiting for
true.
some type of legal representation rather than just completely burning her ship right here.
Yeah.
Of course, all of this is going to be used in her trial and is not going to help you. And I think she doesn't necessarily understand the repercussions and the punishment that's going to come.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be as bad per se. Because the way she's kind of talking about it, and it gets worse, but at this point, it kind of seems like she's, and the way that the officers are so calm and just kind of like, this is a very like weirdly calm situation.
Yeah, good on these officers for
just listening to
handling
her,
this.
and he's like writing down a statement that she, as she's talking, and the other officer just like looks like, oh damn, this is
What?
wild.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole scene is very different than I feel like many scenes we see here in the U.S.
Oh no, she'd be on the floor, pinned down with handcuffs.
She would have been
by
in the
now.
back of the car by now.
Yeah, exactly.
Door slam, like headed to the station.
Yeah, with something stuffed in her mouth to shut her out. Yeah. Completely different.
It's always interesting for us to watch like these law enforcement interactions.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just so vastly different.
It is
than what you would see here.
And you even see the for the listeners, the UK officer like even had a
taser.
A taser.
Yeah, they have a taser.
Right. Yeah.
When entering a suspected killer's
murderer. Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
No way you see that in
Not
the
a
US.
chance. Not a chance.
And that door is getting torn off the hinges.
Right. Yeah.
Or a hole just blown into the wall.
I didn't even think of that when they were so politely like they just busted the bottom panel
Very
out. I didn't even think
They didn't
about
want to break
that.
the actual door, so they
Yeah.
just busted the panel
Yeah.
and then crawled through.
Right, yeah.
Dude,
US police would have been blowing the whole door open. Yeah.
there'd be a SWAT vehicle
Right.
with like one of those arms that just goes and like pokes a hole in your house. Takes the whole wall down.
Yeah, that's a
20
great
guys
point.
pour out.
Yeah, and there had been like red dots all over her.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Or a canine running in.
Oh
you
my
know.
God, yeah.
So this is just it's just such
It's fascinating to watch.
It really
the UK
is.
handle this, yeah.
and they're dealing with a suspected
Yeah,
killer.
murderer. And yeah, props to UK police. Thank you guys for being chill. So she signs a written statement of her confession because she's saying all this. So the police officer's writing it all down and then he reads it back to her and she signs this statement to confirm that, yes, I just confessed all this to you.
Cheer up, at least you caught the bad guy.
I'm
I
just
know, I
waking
don't
up
seem-
today
I
and
don't
done my
know,
job.
I don't
No.
I know I don't seem
Not a lot,
100% evil, but we all, yeah,
I'm not going to comment on anything. It's not my job to comment on it, okay? Because I've got to be impartial with everything, okay? So I'm not going to give any comment.
No, well, I mean, I deserve to obviously get whatever's coming sentence-wise, because that's the right thing to do. And that might give me a bit of peace.
This other officer's face is just cracking me up. He's like, he's never been on this situation before.
Yeah. And I really respect this officer being like, it's not my job to comment. Just shut up, lady. And like, let us arrest you and figure this out.
It does kind of feel like she knows this is being recorded on body cam. Maybe not, but she's kind of like at least trying to gain favor with the officers. Kind of be like, I'm not totally evil.
Yeah.
I'm not a bad guy.
Right.
Like,
Well, I think at that first statement, she says like, "Oh, cheer up, you've caught the bad guy."
Yeah.
Like,
hey,
you should be cool about this.
It's all good. Just hand my sentence down and I'll go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is
like,
that
no
much.
big deal.
Yeah.
It's like such a weird.
It's a weird
There's
energy.
two dead, murdered people here that are also her mom and dad, and she's just like,
Yeah.
it's all good.
It's
I just slipped them some pills, and But then, you find out what happens to mom, and different story.
Yeah, which we'll get into that. But God, man, such a bizarre interaction. It's really creepy when you start thinking about it too much.
I mean, she's had 4 years to run this interaction through her head.
A million times.
So I'm sure it's rehearsed to some degree.
Yeah, true.
Like, it has to be. And she knew, and she said it, she knew it was going to happen. Like, I think in a weird way, she's still more in control of the situation than the police are because she knows every little detail.
Yeah.
So she is probably, giving her confession and everything because she does want to get that guilt out, but she knows what the end game is going to be.
Right.
To some degree.
Yeah.
To some degree, yeah. To what extent it will be, I think, is another question. But I think she's still playing some manipulation here with the officers and trying to, like, look at little old me here.
Exactly.
Don't really know what happened.
Right.
Something happened, but
it's definitely that.
It's just bizarre.
I think control is a good way to put it because right when they're arresting her, she's like, "Oh, I need to go show you. Can I go show you?" No, lady, you're under arrest.
No, this is a crime scene. Yeah. We're going to forensically scrub this place.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
We're not going to let the killer then go, all right, let me walk you through.
Yeah. It's so
step by
odd.
step. retrace my steps here for you.
Yeah.
So let me help you solve it now.
Right. Yeah, it is like that. So I think control is definitely a part of it.
Well, I think also too is that she just wants to talk about it. She hasn't been able to talk to anybody about it for almost half a decade.
Yeah, the floodgates are open.
Yeah, she's
now.
probably in a weird way like excited to talk about this, and it's weird.
Right.
It's weird.
So let's not get it lost here. The murders had occurred back in June 2019, meaning Virginia had been living in the house with her deceased parents for over 4 years, which just that in itself is sickening.
Yeah.
And not something you hear every day.
No.
She then explained to the police where her parents' bank cards were and mentioned transactions and bank information that would be important for the officers to have. After her arrest, she confessed she'd been planning to kill her parents since March 2019, 3 months before she actually committed the murders. Since John had given her access to the finances, she had been stealing thousands from them. She hadn't worked since 2017 when she worked as a bartender at the Ship Pub. So for 7 years, she's just been leeching off of her parents' money. She used their credit cards and took out countless loans in her parents' names. Whenever they questioned her, she always had an excuse for where the money had gone, and they believed her. And like we mentioned earlier, she had 60,000 pounds of debt, or 81,000 US dollars, by the time of the murders. Over the years, she had stolen around 150,000 pounds in total, or 200,000 US dollars. Even after their death, she continued to collect her parents' pensions. She benefited from 59,664 pounds from the state pension and 76,335 pounds from a teacher's pension. So just completely liquidating all of her parents' assets.
Yeah.
From police footage of the home, she wasn't using it for any extravagant lifestyle, because as you can clearly see in this body, this is a just very ordinary
home. Yeah.
Home.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing stands out. It's not like many people who drain, others of their assets, where they go on lavish, vacations, they buy fancy cars.
Yeah.
And so she didn't do any of that.
Yeah, no, she was like buying Southern Comfort
Shopping
for her neighbors. Yeah, and trees and stuff for her neighbors. Really weird.
She actually lived pretty simple. She didn't use it for vacations, but she did confess that she had been using some of the money toward some online shopping and gambling, especially online bingo. Between June 1st, 2018 and September 14th, 2023, she spent 21,193 pounds on gambling transactions. The money was also used to buy her neighbors random gifts and food, and some of it was stored away for later use. So, and you wonder about the gambling. Is that just like something she kind of fell into, or did she do it out of the purpose to possibly, maybe this is how I pay my parents back since I'm not working. I'll just get really good at bingo.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's really bizarre, but we've covered parricide before.
A few times, yeah.
Yeah, and I know money is a big motivator for people to kill their parents. So I think she got a free ride. And that was what she was interested in. And
it's super rare for a daughter.
Yes,
it's
very
like
rare for women. Rare. Yeah. For me at this point, it seems like money is the sole motivator. She realized, I can keep collecting their pension checks. I can keep not working, doing whatever I want, whenever I want, but just constantly. And that seemed to be the sole motivator for it. Also, I mean, it obviously, maybe not obviously, but it does appear possibly something mentally is unhinged.
Yeah.
For just the sheer fact that you're living with the dead bodies for 4 years.
That, and just the logic is completely missing from this situation. Like, you really thought you would just get away with this forever?
Yeah.
Like, people just be like, they went on a permanent vacation. And
yeah.
That's the end.
Yeah. And
we'll never see him again.
Yeah. And that's what I think, like, she didn't think that she was going to get away with it forever. Possibly she was maybe a bit surprised it took so long, but she did cover her tracks fairly well. But yeah, 4 years.
So then it makes you really wonder about motive.
Yeah.
Is the motive the money, or was the motive always just to get rid of her parents?
I think it's money, because the fact that she kept the bodies around, I think it was just to collect those checks. and to keep those bank accounts going. Because what if they had in their last will and testament that their money would be dispersed to the other children,
Right.
leaving her nothing? So I think she loved the free ride. I think that's really what she was going on.
She just wanted to take that free ride for as long as it lasted.
As long as possible. Yep. Virginia ended up explaining that she killed her parents because she felt trapped as their caregivers, and she figured they would eventually figure out where their money had been going. Whether you believe her or not, I guess that's up to you. She also claimed that John was abusive and her mother was mentally unwell. According to her, the only way out was to murder them. She also told police she had to, quote, build up gumption to kill her mother as, quote, I knew I had to get it done. Disturbing. So in March 2019, she began storing away a large amount of prescription drugs. At first, she dosed her father's lunches, but they only made him lethargic and slightly sick. She then prepared their dinner in the upstairs kitchen and dissolved various medications in higher doses into several drinks that she then served her parents on June 17, 2019. The doses were separated into 4 drinks, 3 of which were alcoholic. 2 were meant for John, and the other 2 for Lois. John drank both his poison brandy and his Guinness. When Virginia checked on him at 6 a.m. the next morning, he was unresponsive. She then checked his pulse to confirm he was dead. Virginia had given Lois a smaller dose of the prescription cocktail split between her 2 drinks. That next morning, after confirming her father was dead, Virginia then went upstairs and found Lois in the second-floor bedroom. Her mother was lying on the bed, awake, listening to the radio. The dose had not been enough to kill her. Virginia said hello to her mother before heading back downstairs and grabbing a hammer. When she returned to the bedroom, she struck her mother in the head countless times. The medical examination determined that Lois had defensive wounds on her arms, confirming that she was conscious during the attack. Virginia then dropped the hammer and went downstairs to get a knife from the kitchen. When she returned to the bedroom again, she stabbed her mother 7 times in the chest and once in the hand, killing her in the process. Virginia claimed she had apologized to her mother moments before she died. I don't know if I believe that. Virginia told officers exactly where the murder weapons were in the house, and she mentioned the hammer would still have blood on it. So you're keeping the murder weapon inside the house with blood still on it. What is
there's
that
no
all
attempt
about?
to get rid of evidence here at all.
No. So I think she just expected that this day would eventually come. So she just left it around for a while.
And you think she went the violent route with her mother primarily just because she needed to end it quickly?
I don't know.
And she was like, well, that's all I have available to me.
Because it seems like poisoning is a way of distancing yourself from a violent crime. It is a violent crime, but it seems like a way for the suspect to be like, well, you're just drinking this thing that I poisoned you, and I can kind of look away. It's very distant.
Yes.
He died in his bed, right?
She just woke up and, oh, he's gone now.
Right. But then to do like a complete 180 with the mother, realizing that she was still alive, instead of just like dosing her again later with maybe a heavier dose,
Yeah.
she then resorts to a completely violent murder. I don't even know how to.
Well, I mean, that's a major
deconstruct that.
jump
Major.
to
That
go
is
from,
completely the
I'm going to
opposite.
poison them to, I'm going to brutally stab them, bludgeon
Right.
them to death. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think says a lot about
Virginia. Yep.
I mean, that's scary.
Yeah. She, we'll watch this video of her in her cell when she confesses some of this, and you'll see her, she briefly cries after explaining what she did to her mother, and she calls it grisly. This is actually the first time she had shown any emotion over what had happened. So we'll watch this clip here.
So, murder weapon is upstairs in the toilet room, kitchen knife. It's in the middle of the brown carpet, against the wall, opposite shelves. So there are 2 long white shelves. So opposite where that wall is, that's where the knife is. So the next bit is very hard to talk about. That's probably the most grisly detail. So on the ground floor, underneath the stairs, there's a few like storage boxes and things. And in the middle, I think it's in one of the boxes or in a bag or something. If you want me to shush after this, it's fine. But every bit helps. You will find forensic bits helpful. There's a hammer. I know, but I'm trying to help so you find everything. It's in the middle underneath the stairs. It will still have blood on it. It's rusted, but it will still have blood traces on it. So not cooperating is cute.
Yeah.
There's no point not cooperating, it really isn't. And whilst apart from the way I should have what I've done, that's the way of doing nothing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear. But on YouTube we'll have the captions there.
Yeah, and for the listeners, no lawyer present.
No, she just is like it's futile to,
Yeah, I gotta say everything.
Not deny anything at this point.
Yeah. Which
no lawyer would advise you do that.
Right.
To just give it all up like that. But maybe it's just she was at that point.
Yeah, probably some catharsis there just to say everything. Investigators later discovered the knife that she had used to murder her mother had been bought in May 2019, along with tools to crush and separate prescription tablets. This left very little doubt that the murders were premeditated long before they occurred. After the murders, Virginia washed her hands and noticed she had injured herself during the attack. I believe it was a knife wound as she was stabbing her mother. So she changed her clothes, checked to make sure both of her parents were deceased, and then went to the local doctor. She explained to the staff she had cut her hand while chopping vegetables. Then she headed into town to buy plastic gloves and 2 sleeping bags before texting one of her sisters from her mother's phone, saying they were heading to the seaside for a while. So very soon she started this elaborate plan of pretending that her parents were still alive. And I think that's sick. I think that is sick. To your own sister too, and this is her sister's mother and father, to do this, I can't even wrap my head around that. At home, when she got there, Virginia then placed her mother's body inside a sleeping bag and plastic material before hiding her in a double wardrobe in the second-floor bedroom. She then stuffed sleeping bags and duvets in front of the body before taping the door shut and placing cinder blocks in front of it. She then created a makeshift mausoleum for her father in the first-floor room where he had died. She placed his body in a sleeping bag and then put cinder blocks and wooden panels around her father's body on his bed. She then covered him with blankets and bed sheets and laid several pieces of artwork over the bed sheets. Police reported that 11 layers of material covered his body, and some of the artwork reportedly belonged to Virginia's grandfather. It's believed that her goal was to conceal the smell of the bodies as they decayed. So yeah, there were reports, if you remember, the gardener, Judith, I believe her name was, she wasn't allowed to go inside, right? But she noticed that when Virginia would open the door to come in and out, she smelled like heavy perfume. She even like gifted people perfume and stuff. So I imagine that house, because of these decaying bodies, she was just going around trying to spray perfume everywhere to cover it up. Which, God, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Well, it's like, there's no way all that smell was being concealed by all this just layers of, objects and sleeping bags. I mean, that's not going to conceal the smell. It's gonna seep out.
I think even when they're in that room, I could be wrong, but if I went back and I was rewatching it, but I swear you can see her at one point when they're in that back room where the father is, you can see her doing this for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think it still even smelled 4 years later.
Yeah, none of those materials are airtight. There's cracks and, places for that smell. I mean,
right.
It's going to find its way out.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So on June 19th, Virginia impersonated her mother on the phone to receive an updated credit card and PIN number. She then began spending even more of her parents' money. She did not work and continued to live off her parents' money for years, as we mentioned. All the while, she cycled through several explanations for why her parents were never available. They were always traveling or vacationing, they were sick, or they had moved to the coast. Virginia had recalled an old conversation her father once had with a neighbor years earlier, and this is how she built her lie. Her father had always told the neighbor that he and Lois had plans to move to the coast, specifically to Walton-on-the-Naze, so Virginia knew how to weave several believable lies. And then when neighbors began gossiping about their disappearance, Virginia used that gossip as a reason for why her parents were never around. Detective Superintendent Rob Kirby of Essex Police called Virginia an, quote, intelligent manipulator who lied about almost every aspect of her life. Because of these lies, no one seemed to seriously question John and Lois's disappearance for years. Virginia constantly impersonated them, making phone calls, sending out cards and gifts. Friends and family also knew the couple was getting older and more forgetful, and many knew they struggled with their physical and mental health. I believe Virginia would even try and impersonate her mother on the telephone, like with her voice, and that's why she was calling police sometimes impersonating her mother. Yeah, super disturbing.
Next level psycho shit.
Yeah, it really is. After Virginia confessed to her crimes, many neighbors were worried that the food she had been leaving them was also poisoned, right? That would be the first place where my mind would go. And it's odd because 3 weeks before Virginia's arrest, an 85-year-old woman who lived on a nearby street had died, and police learned that Virginia had been taking meals to that woman.
Oh, so they're totally thinking,
is she poisoning the whole neighborhood?
whoa,
Yeah,
whoa.
right?
Yeah, that's...
So police ordered a postmortem examination to check that woman hadn't been poisoned. Police also closed off the woman's home and searched it for days, but luckily they later confirmed that the woman had died of cancer, not poisoning, and they never found any evidence that Virginia had poisoned anyone but her own parents, thankfully. But holy crap, could you imagine in that time frame where you're like just totally panicking that who knows? Because she was constantly leaving gifts and specifically food or consumables on her neighbors' doorsteps.
And we still don't know what she was poisoning, what she poisoned them with, right?
As far as I could find, they never listed the exact prescription medication.
It was cyanide or something.
I'm wondering if it was just a vast amalgamation of her parents' meds that she had gotten.
Just crushed it all up and put it in the drink.
Yeah, because knowing that they were in such poor health, I could imagine she just had a ton of pills on hand.
God.
Yeah.
Well, as you can imagine, we've already kind of talked about, a case like this is extremely rare. Only about 2% of all murders in England and Wales are parricides. Which again, parricides are when offspring murder their parent or parents. The killers are often white men, and the murdered parent is typically the primary caretaker of the offspring. But in this case, Virginia was a woman and actively a caretaker of her parents. So the roles were reversed in this case. A former Scotland Yard detective, Peter Blexley, said Virginia was a level all of her own and called her a next level sociopath, psychopath. Kind of agree.
Yeah.
Virginia pled guilty to the murders of John and Lois McCullough. She was sentenced to a minimum of 36 years before she'd be considered for release. So she didn't even try to go to trial or anything like that. She just was like,
I mean, she buried herself.
Give it to me.
Early on, yeah.
I wonder if she would have done the same if there was death penalty in the UK. You think she would have just admitted to all this? I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And 36 years.
Yeah.
So she'll be in her 70s. Medical reports on Virginia found that she had, quote, symptoms of personality disorder and autistic spectrum condition. She may have had mild depression and since the murders developed some psychosis. The judge, Justice Jeremy Johnson, mentioned one report suggesting that Virginia's autism could have led her to thinking she had, quote, a binary choice between living with your parents and killing them. But he said the evidence compellingly shows a financial motivation and desire to avoid the discovery of her stealing and lies. Virginia had accused her parents of emotional and other neglect when she was young, and one neighbor who did not want to be named claimed to have received several letters from Virginia since her arrest. She told him, quote, "Things aren't black and white, and the brutality of her crime wasn't the real her." The neighbor said Virginia used to confide in him and his wife, and once she said to them, "Your kids are lucky to have parents like you." The neighbor said, and that spoke volumes. Her upbringing wasn't very good. It was heinous what she did, but like so many things in life, there's two sides to every story. Justice Johnson told Virginia, quote, "Your sisters do not support everything you say, but in any event, you were in your 30s when you killed them. Any difficulties in childhood do not begin to excuse what you did." And during her sentencing, Justice Johnson also said Virginia's actions were a gross violation of the trust that should exist between parents and their children. He said he was sure the offenses involved a substantial degree of both premeditation and planning, and since Virginia had accumulated a large amount of prescription drugs and bought a knife in May 2019, as well as implements to crush and separate tablets, he said these were considered acts of aggression following months of thought and planning. I'm sure a substantial motive for each of the murders was to stop your parents discovering you had been stealing from them and lying to them, and to take money that was intended for them. Richard Butcher, Lois McCullough's brother, said in a victim impact statement that his niece was very dangerous and that the details of what had happened had undermined my faith in humanity. Statements were also read on behalf of Virginia's sisters, who had been granted anonymity by the judge. One said that they had been left devastated and bereft at the deaths of their parents, and they wrote, quote, "To me, this situation is quite literally a living nightmare from which I will never wake up. The haunting thoughts of whether my parents suffered if they were taunted." Another said, "I feel sick to my core. We've been cruelly robbed of more loving memories and bonds with our mom and dad for years to come. How dare Virginia rob us of that life? So many lies have been told to cover the horrific truth that she had murdered our loving mom and dad." Just very, very sad. Just to and shocking to find out that your youngest sister, just absolutely took advantage and exploited your parents and then brutally murdered them in cold blood.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a really, really horrible thing to have to go through and then live with for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And there's just very little remorse, if any remorse at all, on Virginia's part.
Yeah.
It seems like.
That's why it almost felt like more of a catharsis for her to get everything off her chest. It wasn't for any noble reason, like, oh, I'm confessing and I'll go through with my punishment. I think it was just like, I've been wanting to tell someone I've been wanting you guys to catch me so I can finally get everything off my chest.
And maybe she thought through all those police phone calls that eventually they would have come in and like did more investigating when she said she was attacked by intruders and things like that. And they would have just came upon it and maybe it would have lined up with one of her stories at that point, and she could have been like, oh, I don't know. But come on.
Yeah.
Any competent detective or, forensic, analyst is going to be like, yeah, this is clearly her.
Yeah.
She did not cover her tracks. She left the knife, the bloody hammer. It was all there.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people, as I was researching some of this, I was seeing a lot of people really confused at like, how could the sisters or any family members not figure this out, like, or be suspicious after so long? Because 4 years is quite a long time. Like my family's back in Michigan, but I still actively try and call them and go see them and go visit and go back for the holidays and everything.
So why wouldn't her sisters have done the same?
Right. Yeah. And I'm curious, and they've been given anonymity, and I respect that. And we can unfortunately only speculate. I mean, we know that Virginia is a very good liar, and she was doing all those things like scheduling the cards and gifts to the grandkids. And she was still texting on their phones, pretending that she was them. So I don't know. I think that is one of the most confusing parts of this case is like, why hadn't they seen them for that long?
I think there's some intricate family dynamics.
That's what I was thinking too.
As in any case, there's always some family dynamics that aren't disclosed publicly.
Yeah.
That we'll never know. And I think that's the case here. I think there's definitely some things we just don't know about. Maybe some things that have happened, falling out. And there might be a legitimate reason that they don't see each other on that, holiday basis or whatever, normal basis that we'd all expect sisters, would go see their parents for. I think there's absolutely something there that we just don't know. Because otherwise, at least you'd be like, well, they didn't really, what kind of sisters are they if they didn't even care enough to go check on them over all that time? But again, also is the pandemic as well. And we don't know where the sisters were or where they lived or how far it was or the circumstances on their end.
Yeah, or if they were even got along with Virginia, and when Virginia was like, don't come to the house, it's like, okay, what am I going to do about it, really?
Exactly.
And knowing that your parents are possibly debilitated for certain mental, physical health conditions, I think there's enough there to where she could really sell that lie, and that they were kind of boxed out of their lives to some degree. I have an uncle who lives in Scotland, and, it's like, it was hard for him to come back to see his mom and dad. And he's been there a long time. So there's possibly some distance complications, life complications, you never really know. But I did see some people kind of like, how would they not know? But I think maybe there's something a little untold here, and we just have to respect their anonymity and their privacy.
Yeah, well, it's like how, some of us, I know for me, my parents live here. I don't see them that often.
Yeah.
Some of my family I only see a few times a year.
Right.
And some of my family I don't talk to that much. It's just every family's different. And so we just don't know the full details of what those relationships were. And so I don't think you can fully judge on that.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible that this all played out the way that it did. And they just weren't that close, or they had a reason for not coming physically to check on them. And I think it's very clear that Virginia is a pretty good manipulator, pretty good liar, and put a lot of work in to create this elaborate sort of cover up and stories, and you try to keep it going as long as she could, because she was really enjoying all that money she was getting. And so she wanted to ride that out as long as she could. And then, I think eventually reached a point where it's like, well, this is going to end. I'm going to run out of money, or I'm going to get caught.
Yeah.
And thankfully she finally did. But I don't know. There's a lot going on here. I think there's a lot that we just don't know. And obviously there's a lot mentally going on with Virginia. But at the end of the day, she's in prison. She's serving time for the double murder. And there's not much of a better situation that could come out of that, other than justice has been served here. She's serving her time, and obviously doesn't bring back Virginia's parents, and her sisters have to live life without them from now on. But a really tragic story. It's just very bizarre. But let us know your thoughts. Maybe we're missing something, or not thinking of another possibility here for why Virginia did what she did. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up there. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us for another episode of Lights Out. If you want to see more Lights Outs, go check out, I think a lot of people judged last week's episode. I think a lot of people judged it and didn't give it a fair chance. Yeah. I think some people were like, I don't know, it doesn't look that scary, that it doesn't look very lights out. But it's just it's a fucking crazy story.
It's crazy, yeah.
This woman is scary.
Yeah, she is.
And she's still out there and still operating in her cult.
Yeah.
It's wild. The Queen of Canada. Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, kind of looks boring.
No, man. It's anything but
boring. So if you're looking for something else to listen or watch and you haven't seen it, go check it out. But we will catch you guys next week. Until then, lights out, everybody.